Land vs Sea is a 2, 3 or 4 player game. We're going to start by teaching a basic 2 or 4 player game just to get you started before going over the additional scoring options and the 3 player variant, which requires putting all that knowledge together.
Now the game is recommended to be played at 2 or 4 players to begin with, just to wrap your head around those initial rules before diving into the deep end. But if you are gearing up for a 3 player game, there's not a whole lot more to wrap your head around there, so don't let that stop you. Starting with setup, separate the starting and the volcano whirlpool tiles from the other tile. Give the other tiles a bit of a shuffle before placing them into roughly 2 even stacks. Determine who is playing Team Land and who is playing Team Sea. Land will draft and play first, so if you can't decide on this amicably, you can figure out who's going to play Team Sea by who holds their breath the longest, or have a player flip the volcano tile and play the result. Place land and sea markers on the victory point track found inside the game box. Hand a land or sea marker to each player on their respective team. These are waypoints which you can optionally play with during your game. Sit to assist in turn order, which goes land, sea, land, sea. Finally, drop the starting tile into the centre of your play area. And that is setup complete.
Some important concepts before we learn the rules. When drafting from the 2 tile stacks, you may not look at the face down side of the tile. Once you have selected a tile, you may look at it then, but you must not reveal the face down side to any other player. Also, if ever one stack is emptied, split the remaining stack to form 2 roughly even piles. Whenever you play a tile, the only rule you need to remember is that tile edges must match any connecting edge they are adjacent to. There are no exceptions. For example, land to land or sea to sea. But never in a million years can land suddenly change to sea.
To start the game, in turn order, starting with the youngest player on Team Land, each player will draft a tile from the top of either stack. This is repeated until each player has 2 tiles in front of them. Players will then take their turn. This is again done in turn order. This is done by playing one of their tiles to the map. Either side of either tile may be chosen, but remember when deciding not to reveal hidden sides until you're absolutely sure that that's the tile you want to place.
There are 2 types of action symbols in the game, and if ever a player plays one of these, they'll resolve it immediately. The first is play again. This lets that player immediately play another tile to the map. If they have no remaining tiles to place, this action is lost. The second is steal. This lets that player take one of any other player's tiles, provided it is not their last. This is the biggest reason to keep that face down tile side hidden.
After any actions on all played tiles have been resolved, players are going to score based on any closed areas that have been made. An area is considered closed if it has no open edges of its type. A closed area will score 1 point for each tile used to create that area. If the closed area is land, land will score those points regardless of who placed the closing tile. And this works vice versa. After scoring an area based on tiles, add up all the plus icons printed within the closed area and award that number of points to the person who actually placed the closing tile.
If playing with waypoints, which is recommended in a 4-player game and can be used in a 2-player game if desired, you'll also score a single point by being the player to completely surround a tile that has a waypoint on it, or by closing off an area that has a waypoint in it, as if it were an additional plus symbol. When this happens, that waypoint gets returned to the player who placed it. After all the scoring's been resolved, the player whose turn it is may place their own waypoint if it isn't already on the map. Do this by placing the waypoint into an area that matches your team on any tile, provided that that tile has at least one open side and the area has not already been closed off. It's important to note that once a waypoint's placed, it cannot be moved until it's returned to you from either closing off that tile or that area.
Before the turn ends, the player whose turn it is gets to draft new tiles from the stack until they have 2 in front of them. Before moving on to different player counts and additional scoring options for the game, we should discuss the volcano in the room. If ever a tile is placed that creates a closed hole with the same type across all its edges, the volcano/whirlpool tile is immediately placed into that hole, with the orientation of the player's choosing. If the tile is no longer available, the hole remains unfilled and will never be considered closed. If playing a 4-player game, it is recommended that players should not talk or gesture where or how to place each other's tiles. Instead, use your waypoints to offer hints and suggestions where to go. This is just a recommendation though, so you may openly talk about where and how each other should play your tiles, but remember that the hidden information on the other side of your tiles is still hidden information, even to your ally. You're not allowed to reveal that. With all that said, you're ready to get up running with your first 2 or 4 player game, so have a crack, you're going to love it, I'm absolutely sure, and then come back and learn about the additional scoring options.
Quick channel plug, if you've enjoyed this tutorial and would like to support the channel, please consider subscribing or liking the video. Thanks. Ah! The game provides 2 additional ways to score, which you can opt into using either or both in your games. It comes with a great player aid to jog your memory, and these are double-sided for use with different player counts. Some tiles contain mountain ranges or coral reefs along the edges. Whenever a tile is played that connects a coral edge to a coral edge, C will score a number of points equal to the number of corals connected in that chain. Branches in a chain are still considered connected, so you would add all the touching coral. The exact same applies for mountain ranges, but land scores the points for mountains connecting.
The second scoring option is trade routes with caravans and ships, and this also provides additional scoring at the end of the game. Some tiles contain camel caravans or ships. If these are played adjacent to any number of existing tiles with caravans or ships, that player will immediately score 2 points regardless of matching types or number of matches. At the end of the game, any caravan and ship tiles adjacent to another create a trade route, which will award 1 point per tile involved. If there are more ships than caravans in the trade route, all points are going to be awarded to C, and vice versa for caravans and the land team. Now if there's an equal number of caravans and ships in the trade route, neither team is going to score those points.
Yeah, and that's all the ways you can score in the game. The only thing left to talk about is the differences for a 3-player game, then we're just going to go into some basic strategies and tips to help you hit the sea swimming. The third player takes the role known as the cartographer. Turn order will be land, sea, cartographer, so sit accordingly. During setup, the cartographer places their green marker at the start of the victory point track along with the others. The gameplay itself remains mostly the same, with all 3 players taking turns to draft and play their tiles. The main differences are that whenever a coral or mountain chain is connected, the cartographer scores the points instead of sea or land. Additionally, any trade routes with an equal number of ships and caravans awards points to the cartographer. And finally, the cartographer doesn't have access to a waypoint.
You now know the complete rule set to play this game. You can build and explore fantastic worlds. But if you'd like to stick around, we'll run you through some basic tips and strategy just to help get you started. Many of these tips come straight from the rulebook, so don't worry too much that us crazy Aussies are leading you astray. Tip number 1. Since you score per tile in a closed off area, it is almost always better to create smaller areas instead of trying to make a big area that doesn't get closed.
Tip 2. You can't stop every opposing area getting closed, so if you see one near completion, check what bonus points are within, as it might be more beneficial for you to close the area and not only gain those points, but prevent your opponent from gaining them.
Tip 3. Play again tiles are always useful, but especially so when trying to close off an area that your opponent is trying to keep open.
Tip 4. There are tiles that allow you to pinch off what may seem like an ever-growing area. These can be very useful.
Tip 5. When playing with coral and mountains, these can quickly get out of hand if left unchecked, so make sure you cut your opponent off if you see one forming.
Tip 6. When playing with 3 players, the usual points available are split across 3 teams instead of 2, making the bonus points from closing off an area especially valuable.
Let us know how your games go. I'm Jake.
I'm Miss.
And we're Board Down Under. Thanks so much for watching, guys.
Bye.